Okay, I noticed in the video suggestion box there was a question to explain how to properly use JOptionPane to create dialog boxes that ask for input. So this video is about asking for user input, and specifically with JOptionPane, but I will throw in an example using the keyboard to communicate, or I'm sorry, using a scanner to communicate using the console as well, so we can contrast them. So this is just about input and output, two different methods. So the first method we're going to look at uses dialogs, which are a familiar interface element to anybody using a desktop interface in their operating system since about the time when the first Macintosh computers came out. Okay, this example is from the book. It shows exactly how to use JOptionPane to get input from the user, and it is code listing 232 in your course text, page 99. Okay, this is called names dialog. I'm going to go through the main method of this program and describe what's going on. So the main method starts, and the first thing you see here is a line that declares two strings, first name and last name. And so you can interpret this as meaning that we are going to be using two string variables. Okay. So next we have a comment that tells us that we're going to get the user's first name. So we're setting the string first name to whatever the return value is from calling JOptionPane.showInputDialog. Okay, this is a method call, and it takes one argument. An argument is some data that you send to a method that the method uses to do whatever it's going to do. In this case, the method showInputDialog uses this string to display a message to the user when it's trying to get input from the user. So this acts as a prompt to the user so that they know what they're being asked to provide to the program. Okay, so just from going from right to left, this is a prompt that in string form, this is a string literal that's being sent in as an argument to showInputDialog, which is a method that will create an input dialog. This method belongs to the class JOptionPane. And then once the user types in a response and hits return, that response will come back as a string and be set into the variable first name. So moving on to the next line here, we have another comment. We're getting the user's last name. Something very similar to what's going on in this line is happening in this line. This time we're asking, what is your last name? So the prompt is different, and obviously the user is going to type in whatever they want, and the value that is returned from this dialog is going to be sent into the variable last name. So once these two lines execute, these two strings will be storing the information that has been typed into those dialogues. Okay, and then a third thing happens here. We've got a comment saying that it is going to display a greeting, and again we're calling something that belongs to JOptionPane. In this case, it's a different method though. This method is called showMessageDialog. A showMessageDialog takes slightly different arguments from showInputDialog. Apparently it requires you to send in a first value, and right now we are not going to talk about what this first value is for, so we send in null, which is basically means a reference to an object that doesn't exist. When we send references to objects into methods, most times they expect an actual object to be there. But in some cases, if you have no need for whatever the functionality is that's attached to this this argument, then you'll be asked to send null in. So at the moment you can ignore this and focus on the second argument that's sent in, and that's another string that is built by concatenating this string literal with the first name string plus this string literal, which is just a space, and the last name. And then we call system.exit to gracefully exit the program. Okay. So one more thing we're going to talk about before I run this program and show the output. To use anything in JOptionPane, to use the class JOptionPane, because it's part of an extension to Java, it's one of the libraries that come with Java, we have to import the package that that JOptionPane is contained in. That package is called Swing. Actually, we don't have to import the entire package of Swing. We can just import the one class, JOptionPane, so that Java knows where it is. So this import statement is necessary when you're using JOptionPane. Okay, let's run the program and see what happens. So the first thing that happens is I get an input dialog, and input dialogs have this default icon here that's a question mark, and it asks, what is your first name? I'm going to type in James. And when I hit OK, it goes to the next line, which shows another input dialog, and it asks, what is my last name? I'm going to type in Burke. And now that I've hit OK there, it brings up the third dialog, which is, in this time, it's different. It's show message dialog. It has a different icon, and it displays the string that it was asked to display, the word hello with a space, plus the first name that I gave it, plus another space, plus the last name that I gave it. And then that concludes the program. And JOptionPane really is as simple as that. It has the ability to show an input dialog, show message dialog, and there are actually other options as well. If you look at the Java doc for JOptionPane, which is here at docs.oracle.com, this is the URL that takes you to the JOptionPane Java doc page. You'll see that there are a number of options and a lot of different things that you can do with JOptionPane. Some of these are talked about in the book as well. I would refer you to the section that talks about JOptionPane, which is let's see, the section is chapter 214 is when it starts to talk about dialog boxes, and they do a fairly good job of talking about a few of the options. But you can see there are different types of boxes that you can open. For instance, we saw show input dialog and show message dialog, which are both very versatile. Input dialog is for prompting for some input, which is what we were trying to do. Message dialog is to show a message. But there are other choices. Show option dialog is a way to do a number of different things all together, and that makes it a slightly more complicated call. Show confirm dialog is a yes or no question, so that was not in this example. So we could put a confirm dialog in here. So let's give that a try. Let's put this all in an if statement. So let's add a Boolean. Ask questions. Okay, so ask questions is either going to be true or false. Let's set it to false by default. So, and we will say if ask questions equals true, then we ask the questions. Okay, so all these things are only going to happen now if ask questions has a value of true. And right now it has the value of false here. Oops. Okay. So if we run it, it will save, and then it just exits because the value of ask questions is false, so it never will go in there. Okay, but we're going to do something different here. We're going to say JOptionPane and we're going to show. What we're trying to do here is to show the confirm dialog that will give us the options that we want. So we just have a message here. Okay, so we send in null because we don't need that option here, and we need a message. So like something like, do you want me to ask you some questions? Okay, so this is a yes or no question. Okay, and what's going to happen here is notice that we're not looking at the return value. Okay, and that's what we're going to need to do, is we're going to need to record the user's answer in some kind of return value. So I've looked up show confirm dialog here to see how it works, and looking in the Java doc page for JOptionPane, show confirm dialog, the call says that it returns an integer indicating the option selected by the user. Okay, and it says that it's bringing up a dialog with the options yes, no, and cancel, with the title select an option. Okay, so it's going to display the message that I asked you. Do you want me to ask you some questions? And then it's going to give me the choices yes, no, and cancel. Okay, and then the integer that it returns will be either 0 for yes, 1 for no, and 3 for cancel. Okay, so let's just test that out. Because we don't know for sure, we need another integer, or we need an integer value here that is something like confirm answer. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set confirm answer equal to what comes back from JOptionPane. What I'm about to do is basically just test to see what kind of numbers we get. So this is something you can do when you're not sure what the code is supposed to do. So now I'm going to system.out.println confirm answer. Okay. What I'm doing here is more than just playing with input and output. I'm trying to learn about how a call to show confirm dialog works. Okay, so I'm showing you this is how we find out how things work in Java sometimes when we're not sure. We get to the point where we can kind of copy a method call, but maybe we're not exactly sure what kind of values we're going to get back. So what we do is we just throw them to the console, and then we'll look down here in this window to see what happens. So I'm going to run this program kind of like an experiment. Okay, so run the program. It brings up confirm dialog, so that part works as we expected. So we want to see what values we're going to get back. Do you want me to ask you some questions? I'm going to click yes and see what happens. Okay, it returns 0. That's what I guessed would happen. I guessed that yes was going to be 0. What happens if I click no? Okay, the value I get is 1. So they are numbered left to right. Yes, no, and cancel. Okay, so I'm only really interested in if the user answers yes. So I'm going to get rid of this print line. And since the first value was yes, I'm going to say, I'm going to get rid of ask questions. We don't need it anymore. What I'm going to say is if confirm answer equals 0, that means the user clicked yes. So the system is going to ask its questions if the user clicked yes. In other words, if the return value from this confirm dialog is 0. Let's test that out. Okay, it's going to save the program. Okay, do you want me to ask you some questions? Let's say cancel. Okay, didn't ask me the questions. Run it again. Do you want me to ask you some questions? Let's say no. Okay, it didn't ask me the questions. Perfect so far. Do you want me to ask you some questions? Yes. Now it's going to ask me my first name. It's going to ask me my last name. And it says hello, James Burke. Okay. So what we've seen here is that not only do we have different types of dialogues that we can work with, we also have the ability to find out something about what gets returned from a call like this, because we can always take a value and print it out to the console so that we can test and learn about how these methods work. And that's very valuable because there are a lot of times you'll be confronted with functions that you're not exactly sure how they work. But as long as you can get the program to compile and you can put that out, take that output, or take that return value from a method and print it to the console, you can learn about how different parts of the program work, and different parts of Java work. Just one more quick thing. I'm going to get rid of the confirm dialog, and I'm going to show you how we would do the same thing but with keyboard input. So I would, and you've already seen this in labs, but I'm going to put it up here quickly for you. Okay, I paused the video and I added some code here. Scanner keyboard equals new scanner system.in. And this is a line of code that you've seen in some of your examples. What it does is it creates a new object called keyboard that's of type scanner. It's an object of the scanner class type, and then it actually creates that new object from scanner, assigns it into keyboard so that we can use it. And what keyboard does is keyboard lets you read data from the keyboard. Okay, so I should say the scanner object lets you do that, and it just happens to be stored in keyboard. This also, using this, created the necessity for adding an import line for java.util.scanner, because that's where the scanner class lives. And again, when you're using some of these classes that are part of the extensions of Java, you have to import them. So, okay. So once we've got the keyboard in place, we can start reading something from the keyboard so that we can get user input. So I'm going to do next line can read a string. But first I should probably say use a prompt. Always have a prompt for the user. So that the user knows what to enter. Okay. Do you want to be asked a question? Enter yes or no. Okay. We can't use double quotes, so let's yes or no. Okay, so the user has their prompt, so we're going to read keyboard.nextLine, and we need to read that into a new string. So string.response is nothing but keyboard.nextSlide reads a line of text from the keyboard, stores it in the string, so response equals keyboard.nextLine. Okay. So once we get that line of text, we want to check whether it's yes or no. So we're just going to check the first character of it. Okay. If it's yes, we're going to ask the user their questions. So we're going to put a conditional in here. We're going to say if response, which is a string, dot char at, which is it's a method of type string that will return the character at a specific position. And I'm going to specify position 0. So if the character at position 0 is a y, like this, okay, then it's going to go inside the if statement, and it's going to execute the lines of code that are inside the if. Otherwise, it's just going to exit. Okay, I've also added a keyboard.close method at the end of the program. That's to clean up the resource. It basically releases the keyboard resource so that it can be used by other programs and such. So it's just a nice, neat thing to do to end the program. All right, we're going to run this. And now we're getting asked something in the console instead of in a dialog. Do you want to be asked a question, yes or no? I'm going to first try no. Okay, and the program finishes. Okay, so if I run it again, and this time I type yes, and hit enter, oop, it didn't work. Something went wrong. Okay, I found out what went wrong. So this is kind of funny. I don't know why it's happening, but let me show you what's going on here. When I run the program, it asks me if we want to be asked a question. I type in yes. Okay, I hit enter, and nothing seems to happen. But look, the dialog has shown up behind the Eclipse window. Okay, so when I say James and then Burke, it works fine. Okay, now if you're having problems with show input dialog, then one thing you want to check is whether the dialog is showing up behind the window. And I think the reason why the dialog is showing up behind the window for me is because when I mixed input, keyboard input, and dialog input, I clicked in this window and brought it forward, and having this as the active window, I think, is what caused me not to see the dialog. So I can see that other people might have that problem. So if you are running a code similar to this and you're not seeing your dialogues, try dragging the window and see if the dialogues are appearing behind your window. Anyway, that covers a few different types of input. The question wasn't that specific about what was happening, so I hope getting some examples and a little bit of a discussion around the example addresses the question. If you have a more specific question, please post it to the suggestion box.